Another use case will be, for example, after processing our file or something like that, based on execution status, we can route the file into a specific directory. For example, if we process the file with success, then we send the file into processed directory. Another way, for example, if the execution status is failed, then we can go and route the file into failed directory. So it can be another scenario where we can use the listeners of Spring Batch. In order to do that, let's first create our Spring Batch job execution listener. So let's go to the package listener where we have the step execution listener, the custom one, and let's create another class called custom job execution listener as well. So this class gonna implement the interface job execution listener. So this interface has two methods. The first one is before job and the second one is after job. So coming back to our slide, as we can see, before and after job, we can do something using Spring Batch listeners, which in this case is job execution listener. So what we are going to do before job, I think this is the best way or the best stage, okay, to create our folders. Okay, before job we create the folders if they don't exist. So in order to do that, let's go back to our IntelliJ and let's start creating our folders. Okay, so how we are going to create the folder? Let's explore a little bit more job execution and let's try to understand what we are going to take here. I could just go and hard code, right? Hard code in my code the directory, okay? The specific directory that I want to route my files. This approach is acceptable, but I don't think it's the best approach because we want to create the directory on runtime, okay, not the hardcore one. So I can show you some tricks using the job execution. So for example, let's go here in our database. Let's just check here, for example, yes, job execution param, and let's select some rows. Okay, let me just clear this one and let's run this query. Select all from job from batch job execution params. So I already run this application once when we create our step execution. Okay, so what we can see here, we can see that the job execution as param, we have some key, okay, key, and we have the value. So how we infer the key into job, right? How we get this key? First is the origin of this key. Let's go back here, file message to job request, and we can see here, we are setting job params, we are setting the file name. So the key, this one, right? File input, that file, that name. And the value is the file itself, the absolute path of the file. So that's why we have here the key and the value. So this is very nice thing that the people, the Spring community developers, they made. Okay, so I can assume that I can get anything related to my job using the job execution, the step execution, the chunk execution, all of them, right? That's why in the beginning of this course, I told you guys that the job repository and the job params are very important. So let's go back to our code and let's start creating our folders, okay, if they don't exist. Let's create here a new method. Okay, it's going to be void, okay, create directory if absent, okay, because we don't want to create the directory always. So in order to create the directory, we are going to receive a path, okay, directory path, okay. So this is what just and I'm going to add here another validation just in case. This is the first validation, and now we can use, for example, if directory path, nope, not like that, if files that not exist, right, and we pass the file itself, then what we are going to do, we are going to create, so files that create directory, and we create here in directory path. So it's just complaining because we need to handle the exception. But for this case, for an checked exception, we can just use Lombok annotation, sneaky throws. So that's good. And for this case, let me just use one here, Lombok also, in order to log, for example. So for J, we are going to log here. And let's all, yeah, just like that. So this is the first step. So now let's go back here in our job execution. I think we are not going to create it here before the step. Let's create here after, okay, after job, okay. Let's create here. So the first thing that we have to do is to use, as I was telling you guys, to use the job execution and get the parameters, okay. We get the parameters. So this is the parameters of this job, okay, the job execution itself, the job that we are running during this time. So the job parameters, okay, also we can get the parameters. The parameter is key value, so it's a map. That's why I was telling you guys the key and the value, okay. So what we are going to do here is the as always, I like to play safe, okay. Let's call it like parameter that contains key. Which key? This one. So the parameter going to be input, the key going to be the input, that file, that name, okay. So if the parameter contains the key, now we are going to get, okay, the parameter, and let's just call get value, okay, get value. So the value is a string, right? So let's call it by source directory, okay, not directory but source directory absolute path. So it needs to cast, okay, let's cast it to a string, and it's okay already. So this one that we have here, I think we can put it, yes, let's just transform this this string, okay, this string one as a path. Yeah, let's call it just by input. And now the next thing that we have to do, so now we have this input directory corresponds this one, but we don't want to create we don't want the file itself, but we just want to get the directory. So in that order, let's use the input directory that get parent, maybe, yeah. So let's call it by source directory path. And yes, now we have the source directory path. And the next thing that we have to do is, based on the source directory path, let me explain. Example, inside this directory, we are going to create our process directory and fail directory. Okay, so in that order, we can just, for example, create here some new paths, like paths that get, let's use the same source directory path, right? This one. And yes, let's just concatenate with file dot separator that no, let's just put here, for example, processed, right? This is the one, processed, yes, processed path. And let's create another one, which is going to be the failed path. So far so good. It seems to be very nice. I hope you understand. I'm using too much, let me just say, like, using too much strings here, too many values of the same type. We can start refactoring this by putting this here. I think it can be, yeah, we can cast it. So let's just rename it by calling it, for example, this one going to be parent. Okay, yeah, input directory, this is the absolute path, and now here just the parent. So we go to the parent, not the file itself, but the parent, which is the folder, and inside the parent we are going to create our processed and our fail directories. So in that order, let's just now create a new method. Okay, now before that, let's just start implementing here our business logic. Okay, in case of success, this one, fail, another one. So we do this by using the exit status of the job execution. And let's do the exit status that complete that equals the one job execution get exit status. If exit status is complete, then we are going to send we are going to create the file if not exists and send the file into process directory. Else, let's now create a new method which is going to move our file into the correct directory. For that case, let's just create a new method. Example here, let's call it by compute file move. It's going to receive the parent. Yes, it's going to receive a path. Let's call it by, and we are going to receive another path. I think here we are going to receive, we are going to receive the absolute path. Okay, the input, which one? Input directory. Now we are going to call it by input directory absolute path. Okay, let's call it by absolute path, and here also absolute path. So we are going to use the target directory that resolve. Okay, and we are going to take from the input directory, yeah, we are going to get the file. Okay, and yeah, we are going to get the file, and it's going to resolve into a new file, which is the destination. Okay, let's call it by destination. So after that, we are going to move, okay, files that move. Okay, we are going to use the input, okay, absolute path, and we are going to put it the destination. So here I can just use some options like standard copy options, that atomic move, just for also simplicity. So here we have already the logic to move our file, okay, into the correct directory. So it's the same here. We are getting here some exception. I don't want to handle the exception, so I'm just going to use the sneaky throws. So now we have the method which creates the file if not exists or if absent, and the file move method. And now we can just here create, right? Create directory. If absent, we are calling this method. So we are going to pass the processed, because we are in complete if statement, okay? Here, it's going to create the directory if absent. Then what we are going to do, we are going to move the file into this directory that we just create. So in that case, we are going to use the input file path, right? And also we are going to use which one? The target folder, this one, right? So let's just process path. So this is what we have here. So else is not the best case, because for the execution, okay, we have some, let's just check here, status, okay, we have some execution status, the exit status, okay, a noun, executing, complete, no op. So maybe we want to just move once the file or the exit state is failed, okay, or stopped, okay. We don't want other exit status. So if exit status that let's put it here, stopped, that equals job execution that get exit status, or, right, let's put here, or exit status that failed. All right, this is the one that we really need, okay, equals the exit status. So if this case, now we can do what? Yes, create if absent, right, going to be the failed path, and then we are going to use the file move, which is going to be the input absolute path and the failed path. So this is very simple way to do that. Another thing, maybe we can just this method is so big and I don't like that. We can just use the IntelliJ and let's just refactor it and let's call it by compute. Yeah, let's just say compute, okay? So because we can run this in a multi-thread, okay, environment, let me just put it like that. So in that order, we have our code a little bit clean, okay? And yeah, let's just add here one more thing, which is the log. So and here before job, let's just log it, okay, just like this. So now the next thing that we have to do is to run our application. We are going to test and we are going to check if it really moves the file. But before that, we have to inject our custom job execution listener, okay? So let's go back to our job config, okay? Before we use the listener in the step, right? And now we are dealing with job execution listener. So, right, we have to use it in the listener for the job. So now let's inject here first private final custom job execution listener, custom job execution listener, and here we use that. So this is the simplest way to use the job execution listener. So the job also receives listeners as well as a step. Okay, so now let's run our application. So let's see what's happened. Now we have here custom job execution listener. Before job execution, we got the listener, and here after job, it just log us creating directory. So it has created the directory, and now let's go to the directory and let's check if it really moves there, the directory. So as we can see, now we have our file. The file has been moved, okay, into the correct directory. So let's run our application once again. Let's just copy here the file and paste it here. Let's rename the file in order to have the correct extension. All right, we rename the file. Our job has to pick the file. Now, all right, the file has been moved. We can do another test. For example, copy the same file here, paste it here, and call it by test processed. Let's see. Spring Batch took the file, okay. So voila, we have it here. So so far so good. But now, in order to test our other use case, which is the fail directory, let's just, for example, create, as I did here, create a CSV file with bad records and that will force the job to fail. And let's check if it's going to create the fail directory the same way that we create the job itself created the processed directory. But before that, I just think that here we can get, for example, the exit code, okay, because we are comparing two different objects. So it's going to be this kind of comparison, or better, the string comparison. Okay, so here also the same, we should get the code itself, which is a string, and here we compare to another string like that, okay, just in order to avoid comparing two different objects. Here also works, but let's just put it, for example, like get exit code, and here also equals, like equals ignoring case, ignore case, here also like this, my bad, here and here, and let's just put it here like, yes. So this is the best way, because we are comparing two different strings instead of comparing two different objects using the equals, okay, which could be a, I don't know, error prone or something like that. So now let's check, okay, let's run our application and let's see. It's going to process this CSV bad record, and let's check if it's going to create oh, nice. So here we can see we got here some error, okay, and as we can see here, you have to keep in mind that if you are following this tutorial, remember that we are using the skip, okay, we have here the skip policy. So if you want to reproduce the same error as I got here, you have to, for example, in this case, okay, replace here, put some small value on skip limit, Okay, so this is very nice way, okay, to achieve this use case as we have implement here, right? So in case of processed, it's going to process directory. On fail, it's going to fail directory. And this is very easy way we can achieve it very quickly by using the job execution listeners. So for you guys, as an exercise, try to implement the item reader listener, processor, and writer. Okay, so hope you enjoy, subscribe, and put some likes. So thank you for watching.